In this video, I'm going to show you how to use custom fields. This is a really powerful tool for customizing your content in WordPress. Basically, these are additional fields that can be added on to posts or pages. And they're totally controllable by you and ultimately by the client, because they're the ones that are going to enter in the content into these various fields. And users can do that. They can also create brand new fields themselves, although you don't want them to do that. But if they did, it wouldn't matter anyway because they won't show up anywhere. They have to be incorporated directly into theme templates. If they're not going to show up anywhere. And by default, the custom field meta box is hidden. As you'll see from here on this post, there is no visible custom fields box, so we have to go and show it deliberately under our screen options there. Now it's visible, and you can see it consists of two columns basically, a name box and then a value box. And every time I add a new custom field, it will show up here. Now what can we use custom fields for? Well, one of them is to display data in certain ways. For example, if I want to single out pricing in some way, I may want to style it specially, so I can create a custom field called price. And actually this is a very handy thing to have anyway, because if you've got a price, you probably want to do other things with it, not just display it. And I'll get to that in a moment. Data that needs special positioning. Maybe you've got things that need to display as a table. Well, you could enter each of the values. Remember I said you could enter several different values under the same key, under the same name. You could enter 5 or 6 of them and then display them as a table. Or if you need to display data that uses special coding, this is a handy way to do it. Plug in the coding for Google Maps into one of the fields, or a PayPal button coding, whatever it might be. Then you use that and insert it into the page template or the single template, whatever it might be. But custom fields can also trigger actions. So for example, you could have a custom field called hide metadata, for example. And if somebody puts a value in there, and it doesn't even really matter what, yes, okay, whatever it is, and there's something there, then you trigger a conditional to say don't show the post metadata for that post. So that's one way to use it. You could bring in certain content. So for example, if I want to take some information from another post and use it, I could have the client enter the ID number or the name of that post, depending on how I structure it. I could enter that in a custom field, and then in the back end your template file goes and grabs the content from that post and starts inserting it here. So you can get very, very sophisticated with these. Now what's the syntax for them? Well, they're basically stored as a key value pair in the database. The key is the name of the element and the value is the actual information. So for example, if I've got a key called current reading, what am I currently reading? I'm reading Treasure Island. And so you could then display what I'm currently reading in the post. And I just remind you again here that you can have the same key or name over and over and over again with different values each time. That's possible to do. Now how do you call these custom fields? How do you access them within the loop? Well, there are two ways. One is the meta. Now the only thing is here, this actually displays all the custom fields all at one time. And it does this as an unordered list, and it includes some classes for styling. But I rarely use that one. More often than not, what you're trying to do is get the value of a particular custom field and then use it. And that's how you do it here. Now the true here is very important because it basically says find the first value. Remember we said you could have multiple values for the same key. Well, we only want the first one. Now 9 times out of 10 it's going to be only one anyway, but always put the true in there when you're doing get post metadata like that, unless you do want all the values that might be in there possibly. Okay, let's take a look at this at work. Here is part of a single.php file which is going to get some information. So here is my get post metadata there, get post meta. And I'm looking for the artist's statement. That's the name I've given to that custom field. And then I assign it to a variable here so that I can use it. Where am I going to use it? Well, I'm creating a little sidebar basically. So remember, we were talking about changing the sort of structure of the page and adding in some information. Well, I'm going to create a sidebar here, and then I'm going to put in an image if there is one. I check to see if it has a post thumbnail. Now I check to see my artist statement. Did I get anything from that custom field? If it's not empty, then I can go ahead and actually create the artist statement. So I give it a title. Then here's where I echo the information from the custom field. At the very end, I want to put the artist's name again, which is the title of the post. So I just put the title in here again, and then I'm done my conditional. Then I put in the actual content of the post that's in the text editor. I put that at this point and give it its own div. And now what I'm able to do is see it at work on the page here. So this is the text from the actual content of the post. Put it over to the left and to the right. There's my sidebar I created, remember? Put in the image, the title, artist statement. Now this is the data that's coming from the custom field called artist statement. Then I just put in his name at the bottom here. And I get this nice looking page, and the client doesn't have to do any of this structuring. This is all done in the single.php template for this post. It's all done by them simply entering the data into a custom field, the rest into the content area, the text editor of the post, making sure that they've created a featured image for it, and this is what you get as a result. So that's the power of custom fields. Now, a quick warning about them. They're not the greatest. That interface, as we saw, it's not very user-friendly, and there are ways to create a custom field area that's much more user-friendly, that has simple text boxes for them to enter into, and they're not having to do all of that. But that's really a separate issue, and you can find lots of information about creating custom field boxes yourself on the internet. So that's one thing to keep in mind. Plus, normally you only have text areas available, but you might want to actually have checkboxes and things like that. That can be done with custom fields, but it requires some different coding. But this gives you a basic idea of how to use custom fields right out of the box, right out of WordPress as it is, and how to incorporate them into your template files.